There are moments in life when the smallest action creates the largest wound. Not because the action itself was great, but because the lesson hidden inside it was expensive. Sometimes wisdom does not arrive dressed in peace. Sometimes wisdom arrives wearing the face of a $500 mistake. Many people believe suffering only comes from great losses. They think pain must be dramatic to be meaningful. But often it is the smaller loss that lingers in the heart the longest. A person can lose a fortune and recover, yet a single painful mistake with a clear number attached to it can echo in the mind for years. $500 is not just money. It becomes a symbol. It becomes the price of not paying attention. It becomes the cost of rushing. It becomes the fee charged by life for a lesson that could not be ignored. The mind often whispers, "If only I had waited. If only I had looked more carefully. If only I had listened to that quiet voice inside." And that is where the real pain begins. The suffering is not always in the money lost. The suffering is in the story repeated afterward. The mind turns a simple event into a prison by replaying the moment again and again. It counts the dollars, then counts the regret, then counts the shame. The loss happened once, but the mind makes the person live it 100 times. This is why the true burden was never the $500. The true burden was attachment. Attachment to being right. Attachment to control. Attachment to the belief that mistakes should never happen. But life has never promised a path without mistakes. Life only offers opportunities to awaken. Some lessons come gently like morning light. Others arrive like a closed hand. The painful lessons are often the ones remembered longest because pain has a way of capturing attention when comfort cannot. A person may spend years chasing wealth, believing every dollar earned will bring peace. Yet one careless moment can reveal a deeper truth. Money lost can return, but awareness lost creates endless suffering. This is why the wise do not ask, "How do I avoid every mistake?" They ask instead, "How do I transform every mistake into understanding?" The $500 mistake may have taken money from the hand, but it also placed wisdom into the heart. It may have removed comfort for a moment, but it offered awareness that could protect a person for a lifetime. Some people lose money and become bitter. Others lose money and become conscious. The event is the same, but the awakening is different. There is a strange gift hidden inside painful mistakes. They reveal where the mind was asleep. They show where desire moved faster than wisdom. They uncover where fear made decisions instead of clarity. And once that is seen clearly, the loss is no longer only a loss. It becomes a teacher. A costly lesson is still cheaper than a lifetime of unconscious living. The world teaches people to fear mistakes, to hide them, to deny them, to feel ashamed of them. But wisdom teaches something else. Wisdom says every mistake is a mirror. Every loss is a messenger. Every painful number carries a silent question. What was this trying to teach? When that question is asked sincerely, suffering begins to soften. Regret slowly transforms into gratitude. Not gratitude for losing the money, but gratitude for gaining the awareness. Because sometimes $500 is not what was taken. Sometimes $500 is simply what life charged for opening the eyes. Small losses can leave deep lessons. A specific financial mistake can stay in the heart longer than larger losses because it becomes a personal symbol of missed awareness. Sometimes the smallest losses leave the deepest marks on the heart, not because of the amount that was lost, but because of what that loss awakens inside. A person may lose a great fortune and still move forward, but a smaller mistake often lingers in memory like a quiet shadow that follows for years. This happens because the mind does not always measure pain by size. It measures pain by meaning. When a mistake carries a clear and painful number, it becomes more than an event. It becomes a story the mind cannot easily release. A loss of $500 can feel larger than the number itself because it begins to represent something personal. It may symbolize trust that was misplaced. It may reveal a decision made too quickly. It may uncover a moment when desire spoke louder than wisdom. The money itself may be gone in a single moment, but the realization can remain long after the loss has passed. This is why a smaller loss can sometimes wound more deeply than a larger one. The money disappears once, but the lesson continues to echo. The heart often does not grieve the money. It grieves the awareness that arrived too late. The mind whispers, "I should have known." It says, "I should have seen the warning." It repeats the same scene again and again as though replaying it might somehow change the ending. Yet the suffering does not come from what happened. The suffering comes from the resistance to what happened. A person begins to suffer not because money was lost, but because the mind cannot accept that the loss became part of their path. This is why even a small mistake can become a powerful teacher. It enters quietly, but its lesson can become unforgettable. The amount matters because it feels personal. It feels measurable. It feels real. The mind can attach itself to that number and carry it like a stone. Every time the person remembers it, they do not simply remember losing money. They remember how they felt in that moment. They remember the disappointment, the frustration, and the silent question of why they did not see clearly. But hidden inside that pain is something precious. The loss reveals where unconscious living was present. It shows where the mind was distracted. It reveals where emotion moved faster than awareness. And once this becomes visible, the loss begins to transform. It no longer remains only a wound. It becomes a doorway. It becomes evidence that awareness was trying to awaken through discomfort. Some lessons arrive gently, but many arrive at the cost. The painful part is not always the price itself. The painful part is realizing that life sometimes charges us for wisdom. And often the lessons that cost us something are the ones we never forget. A person may ignore advice, overlook warnings, and dismiss quiet intuition, but when a mistake carries a visible price, it demands attention. In that way, even a small financial loss can become something much greater than money. It can become a turning point. It can become the moment a person begins to live more carefully, more consciously, and more awake than before. The mind creates more suffering than the loss. The real pain often comes from replaying the mistake repeatedly, turning one event into ongoing inner suffering. The mind has a strange habit of turning a single moment into a lifetime of suffering. A loss may happen in an instant, but the mind can keep that moment alive long after the event has passed. A person may lose money once, yet inside they continue losing it again and again because memory refuses to let it rest. This is why the true pain of a mistake is often not in the event itself. The true pain is in the endless repetition created by thought. When something painful happens, the mind immediately begins its work. It asks questions that have no answers. It says, why did this happen? It says, how could this have happened to me? It says, if only I had chosen differently. These thoughts seem harmless at first, but each repetition adds another layer of suffering. The original mistake may have lasted only a moment, but the mind can stretch that moment into weeks, months, or even years. The event ends, but the inner punishment continues. A person can sit in a quiet room with nothing happening around them and still feel pain from something that happened long ago. This shows that the suffering is not coming from the world in that moment. It is coming from the mind holding tightly to what has already passed. The body remains in the present, but the mind keeps traveling backward, returning to the same scene like a bird circling a place it cannot leave. The painful part is that the mind often believes this repetition is useful. It believes that by replaying the mistake, it can somehow protect itself from future pain. It imagines that constant reflection will prevent the same wound from happening again. But there is a difference between learning and suffering. Learning observes the past with clarity. Suffering relives the past with attachment. One brings wisdom while the other deepens pain. The mind can take a simple loss and make it heavier than it needs to be. Losing money may hurt, but then the mind adds shame. It says, I was foolish. It adds fear. It says, what if this happens again? Soon the person is no longer suffering from the original loss. They are suffering from the layers of judgment built around it. The event becomes larger in memory than it ever was in reality. This is why inner peace does not come from avoiding every mistake. It comes from understanding how the mind creates suffering after the mistake. Once this is seen clearly, something begins to change. A person can recognize that the event happened once, but the mind has been repeating it many times. That awareness itself can begin to loosen the grip of pain. When the mind stops arguing with what has already happened, suffering begins to fade. The memory may remain, but it no longer controls the heart. The lesson stays, but the torment begins to dissolve. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me, the wiser question becomes, what can this teach me now? In that moment, the same memory that once caused pain can become a source of understanding. The mistake remains part of the past, but it no longer has the power to steal peace from the present. Attachment is the hidden cause of pain. The suffering grows from attachment to control, perfection, and the desire to never be wrong. Much of human suffering does not come from the event itself. It comes from attachment. A mistake may happen in a single moment, but the pain that follows often grows because the heart refuses to release what it was holding. Many people believe they are suffering because they lost money, trust, or opportunity. But often the deeper wound comes from attachment to how life was supposed to be. Attachment can wear many faces. Sometimes it is attachment to control. A person believes life should move according to their plans, and when something unexpected happens, the mind resists it. Sometimes it is attachment to perfection. A person cannot accept that they made an error, so they punish themselves for being human. Sometimes it is attachment to identity. Someone thinks, I am careful, I am wise, I do not make these kinds of mistakes. When life proves otherwise, the pain feels even sharper because the loss touches the image they built of themselves. A financial mistake can feel far greater than the number because it wounds pride. The money may leave the hand, but what hurts even more is the feeling that control has slipped away. Many people can forgive losing something in the world, but they struggle to forgive the feeling of being wrong. This is why the same event can affect two people in completely different ways. One person sees a loss and moves on. Another carries it like a burden for years. The difference is often attachment. The mind clings to what it wanted. It says this should not have happened. It says I was supposed to know better. It says life was supposed to go differently. But reality does not listen to those demands. Reality simply unfolds. The more tightly the mind grips its expectations, the more painful life can feel when those expectations break apart. It is not always the event that creates suffering. It is the struggle against the event. Attachment can be subtle. A person may not realize they are attached because they believe they are simply being responsible. They think they are protecting themselves by replaying the mistake. They believe that holding on to the pain will somehow prevent future pain. But often this only creates a second wound. The first wound came from the loss. The second wound comes from refusing to let the loss pass through. When attachment is strong, even a small mistake can feel enormous. The heart becomes trapped in what was lost instead of seeing what remains. The mind becomes obsessed with what should have happened instead of accepting what did happen. This is how suffering grows. It begins with one event, then attachment multiplies it. Freedom begins when a person sees this clearly. The pain may still exist, but understanding changes the relationship with it. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? A person begins to ask, what am I holding on to? That question can reveal more than the mistake itself. It can show where fear has taken root. It can show where identity has become rigid. It can show where the heart has been trying to control what cannot be controlled. When attachment begins to loosen, suffering also begins to loosen. The event does not disappear, but the chain around it weakens. The loss becomes a lesson instead of a prison. And sometimes the greatest wisdom does not come from avoiding mistakes, but from learning what must be released after they happen. Every mistake can become a teacher. Painful losses can reveal where awareness was missing and can guide a person toward greater wisdom. Every mistake carries a lesson, but not every person is willing to receive it. Many people only see the surface of their loss. They see the money gone, the opportunity missed, the trust broken, or the decision they wish they could undo. They focus on what disappeared and never pause long enough to ask what the experience came to teach. Yet some of the most valuable wisdom in life arrives disguised as a painful mistake. A mistake often reveals what ordinary comfort keeps hidden. When life feels easy, people rarely question themselves. They move through their days believing they understand their choices, their habits, and their intentions. But when something painful happens, the illusion begins to crack. A mistake can expose impatience that was unnoticed. It can reveal fear that quietly influenced a decision. It can uncover greed, distraction, pride, or the desire for quick results. The loss itself becomes a mirror, showing a part of the inner world that was previously invisible. This is why a painful mistake can become a teacher. It does not teach through words. It teaches through consequence. A person may ignore advice from others many times, but pain has a way of demanding attention. What gentle wisdom could not reach, discomfort often can. The mind suddenly becomes still enough to listen because suffering has interrupted the usual noise. In that silence, the lesson becomes visible. Some people spend their lives trying to avoid mistakes, believing wisdom means never falling. But true wisdom is not found in a perfect path. It is found in awareness. It is found in the ability to look honestly at a painful moment and ask, what is this showing me? That question transforms the experience. The mistake no longer remains only a source of regret. It becomes a source of insight. A financial loss, for example, may reveal that a person acted from urgency instead of patience. It may show that they trusted appearances more than intuition. It may reveal that they wanted certainty in a world where certainty does not exist. The money lost becomes only the outer event. The deeper lesson lives beneath it. Once that lesson is seen, the mistake begins to serve a purpose greater than the pain it caused. Without reflection, suffering remains meaningless. A person simply feels wounded and bitter. But with reflection, suffering can become wisdom. The same experience that once caused shame can become the very thing that creates clarity. This does not mean pain is pleasant. It means pain can be useful. It can become the beginning of a deeper understanding of oneself. Many people ask why painful things happen. Sometimes the answer is not punishment. Sometimes life is simply trying to awaken awareness. Some lessons cannot be understood through comfort alone. Some truths only become visible when something important is lost. The loss captures attention, and in that attention, the heart has a chance to see differently. A mistake can either close a person or open them. It can make someone more fearful, or it can make someone more conscious. The event itself does not decide this. The response decides it. When a person chooses to learn instead of only regret, the mistake changes its nature. It no longer remains just a painful memory. It becomes a teacher that continues giving wisdom long after the original loss has passed. Sometimes the most expensive lessons become the ones that save a person from far greater losses in the future. Awareness is more valuable than money. Money can return, but the awareness gained from a painful lesson can protect a person for life. Not every loss in life is loud. Some arrive quietly, with no warning, no dramatic moment, and no chance to reverse what has already unfolded. A person simply realizes afterward that something important has slipped away, and the mind immediately tries to make sense of it. This is where reflection begins, and this is where transformation can either take root or be lost entirely. When a mistake happens, the first reaction is often emotional. There may be frustration, disappointment, or even disbelief. The mind struggles to accept that a decision has already taken its final shape. It searches for alternative outcomes that no longer exist. It imagines different choices, different timing, different awareness. But reality does not move backward. It only moves forward, and this is where understanding begins to mature. A painful mistake can become a turning point if it is met with honesty. The mind must be willing to look directly at what happened without exaggeration and without denial. This does not mean ignoring the pain. It means seeing the situation clearly without adding unnecessary stories around it. Often suffering grows not from the event itself, but from the meaning the mind attaches to it. The event is simple. The interpretation becomes heavy. When reflection is sincere, a person starts to notice patterns. They may see that the decision was rushed. They may recognize that emotion influenced logic. They may realize that external pressure played a larger role than they admitted at the time. These insights do not erase the loss, but they change its purpose. The mistake stops being random suffering and becomes structured learning. What makes such moments powerful is their ability to slow a person down internally. Life usually moves quickly, and awareness often follows at a distance. But after a mistake, there is a pause. In that pause, clarity can enter. A person may begin to understand not only what went wrong, but how easily the mind can drift away from awareness when desire or fear takes control. The real value of reflection is that it prevents unconscious repetition. Without understanding, the same patterns tend to repeat themselves in different forms. The face of the situation may change, but the inner cause remains. A person may lose money in one situation, trust in another, or time in another, yet the underlying behavior remains unchanged. Reflection breaks this cycle by bringing the unconscious into awareness. Mistake also humbles the mind in a quiet way. It reminds a person that certainty is often an illusion. No matter how careful someone believes they are, life always contains unknown elements. This realization can feel uncomfortable at first, but it can also bring balance. It softens pride and creates space for greater caution and presence. Over time, a person may begin to see that the mistake was not only an ending, but also a beginning. It may have closed one path, but it opened another path of understanding. The loss becomes part of personal evolution rather than a permanent mark of failure. Even the memory of the event changes. What once felt heavy can slowly become neutral, and eventually it may even become something that brings clarity instead of pain. In this way, a single mistake can reshape the way a person relates to decision-making itself. It encourages patience, awareness, and deeper observation. It teaches that every action carries consequences, but also that every consequence carries meaning. And when that meaning is understood, the mistake no longer defines the person. Instead, it refines them.